2.
Hi there, I'm Angus Nelson. I'm an executive men's performance coach. I advise high-achieving men through my conscious design lifestyle. And the best advice I ever got was this simple statement: you are not alone.
Wow. And neither are you, Angus. I'm here with you. How are you, buddy? So glad you're here. We did it. Hooray.
You didn't leave me hanging.
No, that would suck, man. That would suck for sure. So you're not alone. Boy, so who gave you that advice, or how'd you learn that?
So I went through a divorce as a result of some really poor decisions. The first business that I started, I did for all the wrong reasons. I invested myself in self-destructive habits. And as a result, I lost my business, lost my marriage, lost my sense of self-worth because of addiction. And I was started with alcohol, then to porn, and then I was sleeping around and I blew everything up. And from that, I had this reputation that was destroyed. I was in a small town community in central Wisconsin. I didn't know who knew what. So I became this recluse and depressed and suicidal. And I was talking to a counselor, and he said, I don't care what you've been through, Angus. I don't care how low you feel. You are not alone. And he said, if you remember that for the rest of your life, you'll understand that there's always someone who's been where you've gone and come out of it. And you can always have hope and always know that there's a purpose to your pain.
Wow.
How's that? We got deep pretty fast.
That is deep, man. That is deep. Well, yeah. So let's back that up. Let's unpack that before we talk about some other stuff. And that is, so first, growing up in Wisconsin, yeah. I totally understand the allure of addiction because it is cold. It is often sadly miserable, and the best job is often at something that for those of us that are not super physical people, right? That didn't rely on our muscles, that rely more with our other body parts, right? That work more knowledge-wise. It makes things very difficult because I know that I always felt like a freaking weirdo, man, because I don't fit in at all. Was that how you felt when you're in Wausau too, or what happened, man?
Yeah, so I was a creator, and my mom was from New Zealand. My dad was from South Texas, and they always taught us to think bigger, dream bigger. And the one thing my mom always said is, as soon as you get out of school, grab a backpack and go. And so I was overseas a lot. I had traveled a lot. I came back to Wisconsin, and I was an identical twin. So, there was all these things that made us stand out. I came from a family that caused us to dream big and do big. And so when I came back to Wisconsin after being at college, and then every summer being overseas, and I had modeled for J. Crew, and I had, done all these great things, been written up in the paper. So I came back with a little bit of, some exposure to the bigger things in the world. And I wanted to do something super special for my central, Wisconsin hometown. But it was perceived as a threat because who do you think you are? Oh, look at you, coming back here, blah, blah, blah. And I don't, think that there was a lot of ill intention. They just didn't know and hadn't been exposed, and maybe in some form were jealous or whatever. And I internalized that to think that I was broken, that I was wrong, that I was screwed up, and I was alienated. And that helped me go down to this really dark path, when I was trying to do this cyber cafe in 1998. Nobody knew what a cyber cafe was. Google wasn't even really a thing. The .com bubble hit, and here we were with free Wi-Fi in our coffee shop that offered concerts 3 to 4 nights a week. And we did jazz nights, and we had an open mic night, and we brought in bands from all over the world. And people didn't know how to comprehend that, and we tried to make it look like a martini bar. You had these cool lighting and fixtures and stainless steel and a black mahogany bar with stainless steel top. And it was the coolest joint. We had over 15,000 kids come through our place. But around the community, they wanted to support the Boys and Girls Club because we were too trendy or too different or too whatever. And so it became really frustrating when I was trying to do a good thing and I wasn't getting the backing and support, and I just got angry and I made it about me, and that turned into all this other stuff. So yeah, I'll stop there because that's all part of a book that I wrote called Love's Compass, and I go into all of that really transparently and vulnerably.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy, man. I mean, I absolutely feel that coming from northern Wisconsin. That was, that was a lot of it too. And I went right in the Navy out of high school,
Mm.
so to get out of that crap. So when did you leave, man? When did you go?
So I did that divorce in 2003, was when everything finally went down. And I left in 2005. In August, I pulled into Huntsville, Alabama, August 1st, 2005. And it was as a result of an author was down there. He had written a book. And he had written a number of books that I had read, but this one in particular was called Becoming the Person You Want to Be. And it was all about understanding that, kind of like Wizard of Oz, like you're looking for all these external things. But at the end of the day, Dorothy found that what she was looking for was already inside her. And that was kind of the message that spoke to me. And I said, I'm going to go sit under this guy and let him mentor me and coach me for a year. And that's when I was really introduced to this whole concept that I, now do as a performance coach, is that I could have somebody outside me speak into my life, hold me accountable and push me, and train me in ways that I didn't know, the ways I didn't think, the ways I'd never experienced, and accelerated and advanced my growth on such a trajectory and such a speed that I never knew possible. And then, of course, I met a girl while I was down there and had to stick around after that. And so I ended up staying in the South. And,
that's funny, man. So Huntsville, let's see. I think growing up, the Oakland Athletics AAA team was there. And is Huntsville where Space Camp is too?
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
I drove by Space and Rocket Center. My oldest daughter was a camp counselor there. I spent 8 years in Huntsville, Alabama, and it's grown considerably even since I left about 5 years ago, and I came to Nashville, Tennessee. So I went up the road 2 hours after we had taken a year off. I was working for a company out of San Francisco, working remotely, which wasn't a thing back then as much as it is today. And we were studying all of the areas of innovation. Uber, Lyft, and all these things had come about in disruption from the 2008, 2009, meltdown. And as a result, here I was working with these Fortune 500 brands, running this association, telling about all these opportunities. And my wife and I were like, well, what if we drank our own champagne? Let's sell our house. And every month we were in a different city, staying in an Airbnb or what was the other one? Airbnb,
VRBO.
And VRBO. And so we would stay at these homes for a month, all the way from San Diego to Aruba. And at the end of the year, and we dragged 2 kids around with us. They were 3 and 4 at the time. So I'd work my job, hustling for Wi-Fi, like I did today, because I don't have Wi-Fi at home. We just talked about, I'm at my daughter's apartment getting Wi-Fi here because AT&T and the whole thing that went down this last weekend. But I said 2 cities we picked at the end of this full year. I picked San Diego, and my wife picked Nashville. And once I did the cost analysis, I was like, we can always visit San Diego.
Right.
It's way cheaper.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I chose well, because now, the economy here in Nashville is just booming.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. Well, congratulations. I'm glad that you're still down in the South. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a great fit for you. So you're a twin. You said that, and then you also believe that different is better than better, which is interesting, because obviously as a twin, you can't. I mean, are you identical twins? Or are you fraternal twins? Or is that just something else that popped up, man? Talk to me, Angus.
We are identical twins. And actually, the way I got into the whole corporate world was a result of Marcus, my brother. He was the head of social for Salesforce, that little company.
I heard of them a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So he knew like all the marketers in the space. Hey, Troy, thanks for chiming in. So as a result of my brother being in that space, I had launched my book that talked about that season I told you about, and I started marketing it, and I got into social business marketing. My brother was telling me about this thing called Twitter, and I was getting into all this stuff and started learning in that space. As a result, I started writing and promoting the book and a daddy blog that I had, which no longer exists, but I met all these guys in the dad space and marketers who had children, and now we're talking about their stories as fathers. So I started showing up at these dad bloggers at the times, what they were called now, dad influencer conferences. And I was asked to speak at some of them, and I started meeting some of the guys from that corporate space. And my brother would see pictures of us together. It's like, how do you know that guy? That's my friend. And I'm like, I don't know. And then it was like CC Chapman and Jason Falls and all these guys, and Chris Brogan, and we were just kind of like talking about this fraternity of fatherhood type of thing. And then I showed up at South by Southwest. I'm sorry, Chris Brogan wasn't. I met Chris at South by Southwest. So at South by Southwest, during the day was these dad influencer conference, and then at night was all the tech parties for the all that stuff. And so my brother was staying at the W downtown. I'm like, bro, you got the expense account? I am staying with you. And so at night he dragged me to the parties, and we would play tricks. Our whole thing was, my brother would say, that's so-and-so from such and such. They're a hugger or shaker, go. And so I'm meeting like the founders of Hootsuite, who, Brian Solis and Gary Vaynerchuk, and, go down the list of all these big names. I didn't know who they were. I was just being me. So I'd go up and I'd talk to them for like 5 minutes. And then my brother would walk up behind them or walk up beside me. And they'd be like, what the what? And that was my in. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, you're awesome, blah, 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 blah. And one of those guys was a guy named Jeremiah Aoyang, and we became friends. And Jeremiah wanted to start a company. He needed a people person, and he gave me a shot. So suddenly I went from working in the nonprofit sector to boom, Fortune 500 brands, 74 companies, 205 seats filled, everything from Walmart to Whole Foods to BMW, Coca-Cola, Ford Motor Companies, you name it. And it was a crazy ride.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's cool, man. That's cool. So it's interesting that we only recently started connecting, because though I wasn't a daddy blogger, I certainly was on that path. I mean, I remember, Jason Falls and all the SobConners. We went to, SobCon. That was our big thing. And I never went to South by. So that's probably why we never met. So that's really cool, man. That's really cool. Awesome. How did you get different, right? How did you embrace that difference between you and your brother? To your point, right? He's guiding you and saying, hey, this person's a hugger, this person's a handshaker. How did you embrace your difference there? And how did you find that truth, man? Because a lot of people never realize that.
So, coming from, again, this nonprofit background, I had exposure to, people, just human dynamics and what have you. And just like any profession, we're like really good at doing it for other people and super shitty at doing it for ourselves, right? And so for me, it was having this pinnacle moment of attention being grabbed. I don't think everyone else in the world has to go through what I went through. And in fact, my whole mission is to prevent them from having to go there. I just didn't have the sense to do it any other way for whatever reason. And so for me to learn my lessons took humility and vulnerability and getting super honest with myself. I would look in the mirror and I didn't like the dude that I saw. In fact, I would say a lot of the stuff was based on a lot of self-hatred. And when we get to that place psychologically, what I've learned now, looking back, is that we are a product of our internal conversation. And we will either attract or create the kinds of external experience to validate the way we see ourselves. Because our brain is always in pursuit of validating whatever we feel inside. So it's a solution mechanism. That's what our brain does. It's the ultimate solution organ. And so when we have chaos on the inside, our brain will seek to validate that chaos. So we will attract or create opportunities for relationships, engagements, conversations, or whatever that will treat us the way that we want to be treated. This is our, and so one of my earlier conversations was one of my friends, one of the guys I worked with down at this program in Huntsville, he said, we attract our favorite pain. Angus, you love to be punished. And when I went back through my story about some of the stuff that I went through, it was like I had this self-hate where I was always a high performer and I was never good enough for myself. And so I always thought that I was less than. And so here I am attracting my pain, and can't get out of this cycle because I've only fed myself more of the pain. And so here we go. We feed ourselves internally. We're having this experience. Our brain seeks to qualify and validate. And now we have more of that pain. So what I've learned is that what you hear about, you think about, you talk about, what you talk about, you bring about, right? This is the supercomputer right here. So the data that goes in is the data that comes out. And so for me, when I took the steps to finally start listening to some of these, whether it be positivity or guru or whatever you want to call them, it was the Tony Robbins, it was the Brendon Burchards, it was Brene Brown, it was all those that were part of my story. But then there were other people who you've never heard of that I would just stumble upon a book. John Eldridge was a book that wrote The Heart, Wild at Heart. Like that book rocked my world. Yep. And, it taught me that every man has an adventure and a journey they need to run. They need a princess they need to rescue, and they need a cause to fight for. Like those are different things that were kind of these metaphors for what gives us purpose. And then ultimately at the end of the day, once I started indoctrinating myself to these new understandings and a new sense of self, I started to elevate the identity I saw of me. And as I saw myself bigger, better, more qualified, more capable, and not because I'm awesome, not because I'm better than everyone else and they suck, not out of this place of arrogance, but this place of self-assurance and knowledge and satisfaction and fulfillment, my brain would go into solution mode, and I started to attract and create higher level of quality conversations and higher level quality people. And the echelon of the energy and universe that I created around me was a product of what I fed my internal state. And so now that's what I do with my clients is I've actually created this program, that I call, along this creative, creation is that whole thing of being purposeful in the design. So this is a conscious, intentional design lifestyle where we're not setting goals and trying to achieve things according to KPIs, but rather we're doing daily routines and habits that create the quality and caliber of being that we are, because who I am will determine whatever I do. And the more that I focus on developing the man inside of me, I will effortlessly, naturally, and organically create the kinds of results and outcomes that I desire.
Wow. So let's dive deeper in that, because that's a lot to unpack there. That's a lot to converse about. So let's start with kind of towards the end there. You talked about routines instead of goals, which is really different, right? I'm a sales guy, right? I love goals, man. I love to knock them down, right? KPIs, right? Let's hit them. But my new company is Process and Results. Our process is our daily process and our daily work. So talk to us about some of those daily routines that we need to do in order to get in the right frame of mind and why they're better than goals.
Yeah. So let's start with goals. In goals, you will take, let's say you want to make, 8 sales in a month, and you backtrack, like how many calls do you have to make in order to get 8 sales? Well, if I make, let's say, and I'm totally making this up, the math's probably not gonna work out. Let's say I make 100 calls, and of those 100 calls, I'm gonna get 30 leads. And of those 30 leads, I'm gonna close, 2 sales. So if I look at that's how my numbers shake out, then instead of me focusing on trying to get those 8 sales every month, if I just make that my goal, what oftentimes people do is one of two things. They'll either come out the gate really hard and fast and like, go, 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 go. And they're operating out of urgency and desperation and a lack mindset. And that lack being they're trying to force people into buying. And so the level of pressure that they put, which is both conscious and subconscious, because all sales is based in energy. And so you're going to be pushing this energy that people are going to feel wonky or manipulated or weird, and they won't buy. So then you're going to burn out. And then by the end of the month, you're really frustrated that you didn't meet your numbers. The opposite is they wait till the end of the month, which is even worse because now you kind of dawdled and you kind of, I just used the word dawdle. Hi, I'm old. They just procrastinate. And then the last week and a half, now they're getting on the calls and like, bam, 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 bam. Same thing, lack, desperation, manipulation, that pressure, that energy that they're now giving to a potential prospect is now closing the doors on sales because you're doing it from the wrong place. Versus you reverse engineer what are those numbers and say, if I got to make, these, whatever I said, 3 sales in the month, and I need 100 calls to get to that. What if instead I just said, I'm going to take those 100 calls and divide them up into 5 days in a week. So now all I need to do is make 20 calls. So each day, my only focus is just to make those calls. And so now it becomes this daily routine that's not about desperation. I know the math. I know the process. And all I have to do is trust the process. So now when I get on calls, I've relieved myself of all the pressure. And now I'm just having rapport and relationship. And I'm transferring energy that's full of excitement and ambition and full of solution that I want to solve your problems. And now from this place, I'm just showing up every day, just being me. And here's what happens. When you take the pressure off of that and the energy changes with your conversations and your engagements, your sales will start to increase. And now, instead of just closing those 3 sales for that month, you're closing 6 sales, 8 sales. Because once you change the dynamics of your routines, you show up differently. You're no longer operating from a place of lack. Instead, you're coming from this place of abundance and assurance and fulfillment and satisfaction because you bake into your day just the principles that cause you to operate optimally. And so for me, I have this whole thing that I work with my clients. I call it the 10-minute motivator. And it is you can actually find it at 10minutemotivator.com. And it is a 6-page document that you can read through to get your day started in the morning that goes through affirmations and a vision board and the principles that you live by, as well as a narrative, what I like to call the manifesto of who you are and what you're about. And all of it is based on a next level self. And when you rehearse that emotionally, you imagine yourself or visualize yourself in that next level state, you will actually get to this place where you are becoming that person. You will be that person because your inside now sees yourself at that state. Your brain goes into solution mode, and now you start to create it and manifest it.
Wow. I love that. And that is absolutely a key to making sales so you don't get commission breath. I love that you made a handout that people can get at 10minutemotivator.com, that they can get this, because I agree with you. And I think it's interesting that you're not talking about not setting goals. You're talking about breaking them into a routine so that you can be more detached from the outcome, because I can make 20 calls a day.
Yeah.
I might even be able to make those 100 calls a week or those 400 calls a month, but holy crap, if I look at it as 400 calls I got to make this month,
insane.
That's just a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's just so much. And then we break that back and we say, okay, 20 work days in the month, 20 calls a day. I can break that down. If I really want to break that down even further, I could say, okay, well, my goal should be 3 calls an hour. I want to make 3 calls an hour, and I want to have 3 conversations as best I can. I can be me. I can have those 3 calls, those 3 conversations. And if I get them, great. And if I don't, that's okay. I'll strive to do better next hour. And every hour, right, that keeps me focused on there. And I think that's one of the best ways that we can make our next year our best year, right? Check out that 10minutemotivator.com and get that. So what else is there, Angus? Well, I know you do a lot of coaching with men, with folks who really need this stuff, who really can level up. So what else? Give us one other tip here that we can use to make 2021 our best year yet.
So here's a beautiful thing. So some of my clients are entrepreneurs who are building their own businesses. Maybe they just left a job. I have one client that just left his job, is now making $20,000 a month. He is crushing it, right? And then 10-minute motivator, Joanna, use the number 10, EN won't work. You actually need the number 10. So if you look at your future year, what am I going to do this year? Here's this aspect where my clients who have, like I just said, that one client who just left his job to start a new company where he's consulting and he's making $20K a month. I've got another client who's running a multi-million-dollar business, and it was a live events business. And he's in a place where he's got to change everything about his business. So I've got, different clients at different places with different needs. But here's what I know about every one of them. It comes down to your identity. Like everything I've just said is elevating your identity to help you perform at higher paces and higher exceptionalism than you've ever experienced before. So here's what that looks like is, if I'm looking at 2021, most people are going to set their goals and their resolutions and say, I'm going to lose this much weight. I'm going to be able to bench press this much. I'm going to spend more time with my family, my kids. I had one client who talked about what his goals were for the year. And he said more time with his wife, more time with his kids, and more time for his health. Awesome. What were your goals last year? More times with my wife, more time with my kids, more time with my health. Oh, great. What was it before? He said, actually, I've done it the last 4 years. And he reached in his file cabinet, and the last 4 years were the same goals. I said, let's fix that. Instead of those being goals, what if we make these lifestyles? Like, what if you had a game night once a week with your family? What if you had a couch talk with your wife set aside every week with just the two of you? You set aside 1 hour. And it could be over coffee, it could be out on the porch, it could be on the couch, whatever. Like, we're trying to do all these things thinking that these goals are going to help us when it's just a shift in our routines. That's how you get a lot of these things that you want. So here's going to be the biggest piece of advice I want to help you with for 2021. Like, if anyone wants to ask me, this is what I'm doing with my clients right here, right now. Stop looking at the goals and the achievements from a perspective of just a blanket linear component. And let's instead flash to December 2021. It's the same date now. What are we, the 29th? And you're looking back at 2021 to look at all that you've accomplished and make a list. And put that list in a past tense. I achieved this sales goal. I spent X amount of time with a certain so-and-so. I asked that certain someone for that raise, that promotion, or that elevation. I accomplished this financial monthly goal. Like, put those things into a context of past tense, and then close your eyes and attach your emotion to what it would feel like to be fulfilled, confident, to feel pride in what you've accomplished. Psychology says that when you attach information with emotion, your brain creates pathways called schema. It's a neuro something or other. I don't know all the science behind it. But it connects you to a reality that makes something you're imagining feel real. And science tells us that when we visualize, our brains can't tell the difference between the thing that we actually experience versus the thing that we only imagined. And this is why you see athletes perform at high levels when right before they go up to perform their feat, you'll see them imagining themselves. They're visualizing their success. They're visualizing crossing the finish line. They're visualizing these components. In the same way, you can visualize this future self, and now you're using this neuro-linguistic, programming in your brain to create that next level identity. And then start documenting who that man is or who that woman is. Who are you? Because what's most important in our lives is not what we accomplish, it's who we become. Because who I become will naturally accomplish those things. Great people are not great people just because they've done great things. They're great people because they were great people first, and great people always create great things.
Wow. It's not about what we accomplish. It's about what we become, because great people accomplish great things. Holy crap, Angus. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That is really stinking awesome. So, wow, man. So I guess my last question is, let's go back to that first point you made. You said you're not alone.
Yeah.
So how do we get a little more together? How do we get a little more connected? How do we make sure that we don't stay alone, that we stay in this, that we get people around us that can help us?
Yeah. Gosh, I wish more people just had outright humility. And we live in a world, our westernized world. I'll start there. There are other cultures that kind of transcend into different components of this, but I think for our westernized world, we think that there is strength in perfection. And that if we look a certain part, people will feel a different way about us. And so our whole aspiration is to look that part. My whole thing is not about looking a part. You can go through all this transformation and have a whole lot of crap going on. Because here's what I know, when you start upsetting what you've always known, things get wonky. Because your brain wants to keep you safe. And it will initiate like these survival behaviors to try and keep you in a box. The moment you try and change, I always tell my clients, expect this. In the next 3 to 4 weeks, something in your life is going to go sideways. It just is, right? But if you can back up and realize like those things going sideways are actually a road marker that you're on the right path. Like when you face that, you're facing resistance, and that resistance is actually internal. It's your brain challenging you, saying, are you sure you want to do this? Because all of our track records, our DNA and our history as a species wants to keep us safe. And that's why we have fight and flight in our brain. But if you can push past that to realize that this thing that I'm doing is only different and strange simply because I've never experienced it before. Not because it's dangerous and will kill me, right? So the components of this is getting you to this place where you realize that all of us are doing the best we can with what we have. And so for you to understand that you are not alone is a matter of understanding that you simply aren't in a circle where you've had the level of candor to discover that someone else has gone through what you're already going through. And so it's a matter of finding people who are safe enough to open up these conversations. And it may start with a professional. You may have to pay somebody who is a psychiatrist or a therapist or a counselor at first just to get comfortable with talking about your stuff, right? The last thing you want to do is go to somebody who you thought you could trust and they're a total like douchebag because you've always been in a douchebag kind of sense of self and you've attracted douchebags. And now you're going to tell this douchebag you're ready to change. And they're going to be like I said before, you think you're better than me? Oh, look at you. You stopped drinking. What happened to the nights that we went on and did karaoke and lost our mind? Look at you. You're not like that anymore. Like those are not the healthiest people to be wanting transformation from. But at the same time, like finding the people who have a story that you resonate with, hearing somebody else's story, I love to say that when you show yourself vulnerable, you give others permission to do the same. Find someone who has already done the work. And likely there's someone in your circles already who has gone through something. It's just you haven't had eyes to see. And once you give yourself permission to say, you know what, I finally want to deal with this, you'll be surprised at who will pop up in your world. And you can pull them aside and have a little chat, give them a quick phone call, jump on a Zoom, jump on a Facebook, not alive, a Facebook, whatever, the messenger video, you know, whatever, and have a conversation, say, hey, I heard about this thing you went through. I'm in a place where I'm trying to make some transition too. And I would love if you had a couple of minutes where I could share kind of my experience and maybe get some advice on where I should go. Like this is when you know that you're not alone. You suddenly have power. When you know that you're not alone, you realize you're not a victim of circumstances. Life is not happening to you. It's happening for you to give you wisdom and an advantage for your future. And so wherever you're at and whatever you're going through, knowing that that resistance is here to make you stronger. If you think of like a big Boeing, Hercules kind of plane coming off the tarmac. It takes a massive amount of resistance against those wings to get it off the ground. When it's on the ground, all you need is a couple of wedges. You put those on the tires, it's not going anywhere. But if you want it to move, you pull aside those wedges, and it needs resistance to fly. And so do we as human beings. That resistance gives us strength. That resistance gives us flight. And so the challenges that we face are not because they're impossibilities. They're challenges that are causing us to grow, that are pulling out of us lessons to learn, that are pulling out of us more muscles than we knew how to handle before. We never had to use these muscles before. And now all of a sudden we can self-soothe. All of a sudden we can, have self-awareness and emotional intelligence. So that's a long answer to the fact that knowing you're not alone is a superpower.
Awesome. That's such great stuff, man. You shared so many good bombs today, right? Different is better than better. Talked about routines over goals and breaking those goals down, about creating a conscious, intentional lifestyle. You gave us your 10minutemotivator.com. You talked about who we become, not about accomplishing, and reminding us in closing that we all need resistance to fly. Holy crap, man. That's really, really powerful stuff. Now, folks, if you want to get more from Angus, you absolutely should go to his website. Go to angusnelson.com. But Angus, if people want to have a chat, if they want to, get more connected with you, do you have a favorite social network or somewhere that they can have a chat with you on and maybe share a little of their story and see if working with you is the right thing?
Yeah, I'm at all the things. Simply at Angus Nelson. Facebook's probably the best. You can jump on Facebook, Instant Messenger, and you can send me a note there. Instagram or LinkedIn, all the same. It's just at Angus Nelson at the end, and you got it. And if you're in Clubhouse, come and find me on Clubhouse, because I'm hosting some rooms in there where we're talking about some of this stuff and diving deep.
Awesome. Good stuff. So one last comment here from my friend Les Patterson. He says it's amazing when we turn our thoughts to improving how the law of attraction, the brain's reticular activation system works. It brings potential help into your life. So one of the key factors is finding who you can create that alignment with.
Yeah.
Really good stuff, Les. Thank you for that. And Angus, thanks for sharing your heart today, man. I feel even more connected to you now, my friend, and I'm just so grateful for you. Thanks, brother.
You bet. My pleasure. You betcha, as they would say.
Yeah, you betcha.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Oh,
harsh. Here
Jeepers
we go.
Cripes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and you said, and don't dawdle. Go to angus.com or 10minutemotivator.com. Whatever you got, but thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have an awesome day, and hope this helps you create better routines instead of setting meaningless goals. Have a great day.